patrons. Welcome to your Creep Cult bonus episode. We are continuing with Alphabet Roulette, and we watched Infinity Pool.
Forever.
Not to be confused with Infinity War.
Yes, not at all. God, no, I didn't even think about that. We could have watched that shit.
Not to be confused with Deadpool, The Pool.
Goodness. This movie, the one that we are talking about, Infinity Pool, is directed and written by Brandon Cronenberg, and it stars Alexander Skarsgård, Mia Goth, and Cleopatra Coleman, who I recognize from that Will Forte show, The Last Man on Earth.
I've heard that show is great. I've just never watched it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was great.
I was going to look
like
where I recognized her from, but I didn't, so I don't know where I recognized her from. But she has a recognizable face and voice. Also, she sounds very similar to Mia Goth, which was very confusing with how this movie opens. But yeah, I saw this last year in the theatre when it came out.
It was last year?
Or earlier this year?
It might have been early this year.
Holy shit.
Since COVID, man, time means nothing, flat circle and all that, but, you know, infinity pools. And, but yeah, I went and saw this in the theater, and then these chuckle fucks were like, whatever. And so I've had to hold in my opinion like a
fart with your first date.
like a fart with my first date, which was coincidentally at Infinity Pool.
You don't want to make those bubbles.
Yeah.
But I think we've talked about, pretty sure we talked about Possessor at some point.
I don't think we covered it in an entire episode, but I think that you watched it. I watched it like 6 months later, and I fell in love with it. And then we both convinced him to watch it.
I think that is correct. But we had tried to watch Antiviral before that. Mm-hmm. Before I think that I even knew that it was a Cronenberg movie.
And that was when I remember the thing that I was excited about with Antiviral was that it had the guy who's in Get Out, and he always plays like a creepy dude and all those different things. But and he was in X-Men First Class.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, but so I was excited about that, and then finding out that it was a baby Cronenberg joint at the time, I was like, oh shit, there's another Cronenberg doing body horror stuff. I have watched Antiviral, but it took me probably 4 attempts because it's a very, very boring movie.
Dude, the guy that we're talking about, because I haven't seen Antiviral, is it the
brother?
The brother? Oh, okay, I was gonna say is
the
it
like
the
reddish haired one?
If it was the dad from Get Out, the dad is Eric from Billy Madison.
Yeah.
Eric is pregnant.
No, I think that would have been a more exciting movie. Yeah, so wasn't a fan of Antiviral. I don't even think I finished it. Possessor, again, just like you guys, loved it. And so this one I was pretty excited about going into it. And so if you don't know, we'll probably get into spoilers, but just briefly, this movie is about a couple that are on vacation. And did they ever say the name of the country?
Yes, not the country, but the specific resort. They do say.
I couldn't
and
use subtitles.
It's a weird like name. It's like Ina something or other.
Yeah, so it is,
but fictional.
Another country.
Ina your butt.
And they team up with another couple, and on their outing, Alexander Skarsgård's character murders a guy on accident. I guess manslaughters a guy.
Yeah. He manslaughters that dude with his car.
I mean, prior to, he does get a random.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
Yeah,
but that's the basic premise, and then we find out that they will kill you almost immediately.
Yeah, so this government's like form of capital punishment is they have the son of.
Oh, I think just a family member.
Yeah, so
it's
specifically the son because he mentions like, and we're lucky in this case because the guy has 2 sons, 9 and 13. So they have the son kill the person, and or as part of their tourism initiative to attract wealthy, usually white customers.
You could pay a fat stack of cash and have a clone made of you, and then they stab that clone to death.
You get to watch that clone get killed. Yeah, so of course
so then it kind of just breaks out into chaos, and it's just a bunch of rich people running around, murdering and committing crimes, basically. On a basic.
Yeah, there's a ton more under the surface of this. So I think at this point we're probably. I mean, aside from us saying...
do we recommend... Well, I mean, if you're watching this, you're probably going to stay for the spoilers or you've already seen it. But I will say just, I highly recommend this movie if you're a fan of Cronenberg stuff. I do think that Brandon Cronenberg's stuff so far has a very similar feel to his father's, and I love David Cronenberg's movies, but I mean the way that the pacing is and the way that the story is told, and then obviously like you have your hallmarks of Cronenberg stuff, which is, as you said, vomit, semen, blood, like all the bodily fluids. If you're into all that stuff, and just weird people being annoying and weird, then you'll like this.
And you definitely get body horror.
Yeah.
There was a couple parts where I was like, oh fuck yeah, but ugh.
And if you liked Possessor, I would say go in with your expectations, at a modest level, because I don't think that it's necessarily quite to the levels that Possessor was, but I do think it's worth checking out if you liked that movie.
It's a different type of movie than Possessor is. The pacing in Possessor is just like...
I would say it's worth checking out
for
kind of the idea of the infinity pool. The being able to go forever.
I think stylistically, it is definitely worth a watch just in that territory alone. The cinematography, the cinematography is beautiful. The weird, like the cut between scenes and like all of like the bright colors and everything. It looks gorgeous.
The editing is off the charts.
Yeah. I think that the direction is great. I think that the
erection's great too.
I think the story is where like if you don't dig into it far enough, you might. That's where your mileage may vary, but I still recommend it.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I feel like I enjoyed the movie, but I just feel like I wanted more, but I don't know of what.
Yeah, so getting into spoiler territory here, no, totally. So I feel, and I've seen this complaint from other people too, is that the story and the commentary they're very surface level. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think it's a hard to understand movie. I do think that on a rewatch, I picked up on a lot of things script wise that are hinted at earlier on about what, this process is and what the system around it might be. And there's like little hints to what each character is going to maybe do later on in the movie. But in terms of like really digging into deep themes, I don't think that there's anything in this movie that we haven't seen before in any other clone duplicate type movie that is exploring this idea of
how do you know if you're the clone or if you're the original?
Yeah, you get the classic, which one do I shoot? Well, obviously the one with the evil mustache, but but then you also like that there's this whole thing about the freedom that comes with, and this is what I think is the most interesting part of the movie, is like that freedom that you would suddenly have, that awakening you would suddenly have if death was no longer like a thing you needed to really, or I guess
punishment for
your crimes was no longer a thing you needed to be fearful of.
Yeah, like a whole series of movies based around it.
Yeah, and also kind of with this infinity pool thing, potentially like this idea of like real death kind of goes out the window too, because you're watching yourself be brutally murdered repeatedly if you take it full advantage of this system like these people do. But all of that stuff is like you'll pick it up on a first watch, and I don't think that there's very much to really like dig deep into. I read an article that was like the recurring motifs of Infinity Pool, and I expected this long ass thing, and it basically was just saying, oh, the masks, the Aki masks or whatever that they wear.
Ugh. Hideous. They look awesome.
I'd love to have some of them.
There's one that if you were to show up with, I would ask if I could burn it while you're still wearing it, and it's the one with the dots.
I feel like the masks kind of play into something that you and I were talking about before we started recording, so maybe you can touch on this after, but the idea of like you put the mask on, you're a different person while you're in this vacation spot. And then when that mask comes off, like what's left?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you were talking about with the ending, right?
And that's exactly what this article said. And I was like, well, that's not very deep. Like, like a mask shows up in a movie and immediately you're like, oh, that's a commentary on the masks we all wear. There's even a joke in The Mask about how Ben Stein's character has this whole TV show that Jim Carrey sees where he's like, oh, this guy must know about my mask. 'Cause he's like, we all wear a mask,
Yeah, I mean, I think that, we're jumping a little bit ahead, but I think as far as like the way that things end, I think it gets to the point where Skarsgård's character just,
I like to call him Scarsy.
Yeah, can't
it's affectionate.
Like go back to putting the mask back on, and it's either the decision that it's either like a philosophical decision, and we're seeing his emotions being at this resort while the monsoon is going on and everything, or he physically is just like made the decision that he cannot go reassimilate back into society temporarily.
Or what if this maybe has had this thought? What if he's going to kill himself? Like he's there to die.
Yeah, I mean, that's also a possibility.
I don't want to deal with it anymore, so I'm going to go to this monsoon. No one's going to be able to clone me, so I'm just going to end it.
Well, that is where I think the movie has its most room for interpretation, because everything else is, well, it's crazy and sci-fi and, you know, whatever, and it might take a little bit to catch on. Everything is explained pretty straightforward, and then the end it gives you a bit of ambiguity so that you can at least interpret that part as to, like, because when in the article that I read, it was saying that one interpretation that they had for him staying during the rainy season is that, you know, it could represent, you know, a new season in his life, and winter, just like with the resort, tends to be a time when people kind of like withdraw within and reflect and then come back out in the spring as a new being or a new person. There's a lot of lines, especially that Mia Goth says in the movie, about let's find the real creature inside you and who are you really inside. And so to me, it felt like when he decides to go back and sit for the monsoon, that's him, like you said, coming to the realization that he can't go back home because he is now a completely different person.
So I guess diving in a little bit more, just so you can understand the context of this, after Skarsgård's character has to be executed for the crime of hitting the guy with his car, then he tags along with the rich people and a bunch of other rich people, and they continue to commit crimes and then watch themselves get executed.
It's almost like they're committing crimes of the future.
I almost said that this would have been a better Crimes of the Future than Crimes of the Future.
Well, the box office said exactly that.
Or the other Crimes of the Future.
But then the rich people start fucking with Alexander Skarsgård's character and making him kill himself, and then having himself chase himself down. It gets pretty wild.
Yeah.
And so then at the end, all the other people are like, oh yeah, we're going to go decorate and paint and do our drapes and all this shit. And they're all ready to go home like it never happened.
Yeah.
But Skarsgård, like we've been talking about, is reflecting to some degree on what just happened.
And I think going further into like the reason why they all seem to like be attached with this concept of having their like committing these crimes in order to have their clones like murdered in front of them. I think there's like a certain high that they get from like watching it, because you're watching yourself die, and being from the vantage point of looking from the outside is you seeing a potential like trimming of your lifeline, and then getting to then continue living after that. There's got to be some sort of like intense dopamine hit when it's over, when you're like, this could have been me, but I get to live. I'm sure there's probably some like additional like brain chemistry shit that like really causes you to like crave going back and doing it again.
Yeah. And so it seems to me that this group of people, Goth and Co., they because they mention at the end of the movie, they're like, oh hey, see you next year. So to me, it, you know, that's saying they've done this, you know, every year for who knows how long. And so they probably each had their Skarsgård experience of being pulled into this thing and to me, it seems like this, as random and annoying as it may seem from Skarsgård's perspective, I assume this is the process they do with everyone that eventually culminates in you have to kill yourself, basically. Yeah. Because the urns throughout the movie, they're very much like, and this was in the article too, is a symbol of you are, you know, taking a layer off of yourself, or like you're removing a piece of yourself and, you know, sealing it away, putting it away, and you know, basically shedding layers. And in the beginning of the movie, Skarsgård's girlfriend or his wife is complaining about how he's so robotic and he's so like non-human, basically. And so it seems like because he is that way, that's why Goth targeted him. She has a line when they first have that dinner together where she's explaining what she does as a job. And she explains that she's an actress who, it's a really funny scene. She's really good in it. She's great in the movie, even though her character is very fucking annoying and very grating. But it's intentional, yeah. But I told him I almost wanted to walk out when I saw the movie in theaters, just because I was like, I cannot fucking stand this. But that's just a testament to like, you're supposed to be in Skarsgård's situation there, going like, what the fuck is this bitch's deal? But she says in the beginning, like, that one, she's an actress, so it totally makes sense how she's able to just like turn it off and on
as she feels like.
Yeah, from scene to scene, but also she specifically acts in commercials where she's the person who needs a product because she is always failing at normal tasks.
She's the one who's inept, who you see somehow
throws a whole bag of eggs or whatever, a basket of eggs and splatters them, and it's like, that's why I need the egg catcher 3000. Yeah. So she's explaining that, and she says, I find failure really interesting. I look at failure as like a puzzle that needs to be solved, and so
which isn't an original idea either.
Yeah, but obviously she is saying right off the bat that she has zoned in on Skarsgård because he is that type of person. She obviously, we find out later, has done her research to find out that he had one poorly reviewed book 6 years before. He hasn't really done anything since, so he's a failure. He's in a rut. He's very robotic. He barely says anything for the first pretty much the entire movie, but he really is like a robot. And so she comes in this is my challenge, is we need to crack this guy. And so they go to the most extremes to systematically lead him up to eventually killing himself, and that's supposed to be the final catharsis. And now they're expecting him to come back the next year, and it's left ambiguous whether this is going to be a thing where he reacts going, I'm going to kill myself, this was the most fucked up horrible thing, or maybe he'll spend the winter at the resort, reflect, go back home as a new free open person, or maybe he'll stay and come back the next year and keep doing it the same as everybody else, and you get to kind of decide where you feel like he's made it in his journey by that point.
And I feel like the journey is kind of displayed by the version of him that gets killed. At first it's what he knows, right? Or he is very much the first time that he gets killed, it's the person that he is at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the next time it's him being scared and kind of struggling with that, and then he's this army man, right? Or soldier, I guess. And that is your rule governed behavior, and now we're killing your rules. And then the next time we see him, he's completely animalistic, and it's now we're just breaking it down further and further until we get to what is at the core of being a person, I guess.
Yeah.
And now we're past all of that, I guess, almost evolutionarily, and what's left.
I mean, and at that point there's a rebirth, because at that point he then begins to breastfeed off of Mia Goth.
Oh, totally.
So that clicked with me last night too, is I was like, I forgot about the breastfeeding scene, and then immediately I was like, oh, it's because he was just reborn.
Yeah.
So he's like an infant,
after
and she's
he killed
breastfeeding him.
Last piece of the animal instinct or whatever.
I was
that part with the weird nipple thing, not the breastfeeding, but during the craziest scene,
weird,
where
tripping scene. Yeah.
Oh my god! I was like, what is happening? The body horror. I mean, we haven't dived into it too much, but God, is it,
dude?
He is
rips
great.
His head in half.
Yeah, and also Cronenberg is just a master at this. Cronenberg and the other Cronenberg, both Cronenbergs are masters at stabbings, which are always for the number of slashers I've seen, they just do stabbing in a way that feels so...
It's real.
Yeah.
The impact is there, and there's always so much... because, I mean, if you think about, Jason Voorhees, there's no real emotions behind if he shoves a machete through you or a pitchfork or whatever.
Yeah, the only emotion is me going, fuck yeah!
but it kicks off with this young kid and, this, government-sanctioned crime of passion of him just stabbing this guy in the fucking stomach over and over and over again, and you can feel all of the emotion, just you can see it on his face. There's all the that almost giallo level bright red blood. I mean, it's a harrowing scene,
and also a fantastic performance from Skarsgård in that scene when he's crying and
save me.
Oh yeah, and
I'm sorry.
And they do a good job editing here, because obviously when they zoom in, it's something different. We're seeing two different shots there, but they splice that in, and then also when it's zoomed out, you can see the kid stab him, and then you can see the hole after. So I don't know if they digitally did that or what, but I was like, that's a really good effect because it looks real. Because a lot of times people will get stabbed and it'll just be blood, so you can't really see what's going on.
Yeah.
But at one point, the kid stabs him, and then you can see when he pulls it out, you could see the cut from a distance. And I was like, right on, guys.
Well, when he kept going, I thought we were eventually going to get to
some guts.
Yeah, guts, the entrails spilling out kind of shit. And I would have been like, yeah, fuck yeah, dude.
See, it's there's a lot of gore in this, and it's still has more substance to it. I mean, I know that there's this argument about Halloween Kills, cool because it's gory, but you can have both, and I think this is a good example of some brutality, but also like a decent story. A story, I guess.
I mean, the final piece of gore at the end of this film is fucking gnarly. When he's just fucking caving his own face in, and you just get the quick flashes of like the bones breaking away, and then everything just becoming fucking mush.
Again, nobody but the Cronenbergs does heads being caved in as well.
There's that. If they get ripped in half.
Yeah, it's when he has that vision of the kid like choking him, and then the kid like starts ripping his head in half,
and then he peels the kid's face off, and it's Mia Goth, right?
I think it's his wife, and she's like making fun of him, and she's like, "Help me!" So like making fun of him when he got killed. So outside of the dream and tripping sequences, all of the gore also I feel like is handled very realistically. Like nothing is so over the top that it feels like this couldn't be a real situation. You know, I think it's trying to tap into a similar kind of fear to something like Hostel, where it's like, oh, if we set it in a country that nobody who's watching this movie has probably ever been to, and in this case takes it as far as let's set it in a fictional country, because I was curious afterward. I've never heard of this place, and I looked it up. It's all fictional. But doing that to go like, okay, well, you know, all of this can seem plausible in whatever, you know, super poor, rundown country this is supposed to be, that they had gotten to a point where they were so desperate financially that they made this some sort of deal with, other governments, where they're like, yeah, we have a tourism initiative, and everyone is in on it. Like everyone at the resort is in on it, because they mentioned in the beginning that the car was lent to them by somebody who works at the resort. It was lent to the Mia Goth's dude. So that says and then they want Skarsgård to lie about that being the case. To me, that seems like
such a weird scene too, because Skarsgård just goes along with everything. I was like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Like, that's not what happened at all.
Well, to me, that felt realistic, just because if I was in that situation, I would be like, okay, I'm going to do whatever these guys say, because I have no fucking clue what they're going to do. Yeah. But it seems, so I think it's because all of the resort workers know that this is the best way for them to all make shitloads of money, is to encourage the people coming to stay at this resort to get in on this program, and because they'll keep coming back and they'll stay there forever, and he extends his stay by a week so they get more money that way, and then they bribe the cop later to get the clone, so even the police are in on the entire situation. I'm even semi-convinced that
the original accident.
That the accident was staged either by Goth or by somebody involved. She mentions later, like, oh, we thought we'd have to get you in trouble, and you did it all yourself because you're so fucking stupid. But she's also playing with him at that point. And I think this time around, I was like, I'm pretty sure they set that up, because the headlights going out made me think, oh, the reason she gives him the hand job when he's in the woods is to give the other guy enough time to fuck with his car. That's one thing, and then also the hand job is a way of kind of opening him up to the possibilities of like, hey, if you hang around and you go with me, there's more where this came from.
Murders someone in his post-nut clarity.
I thought that it was gonna somehow loop around, and we were gonna find out that the person he hit was him, because the person gets their face caved in.
That would have been cool, yeah.
And I was like, cool. Oh, and so when it got closer and closer toward the end, I was like, what if that was him? And then I thought I was going to show him like walking out and us like restarting.
Well, I had that thought at the beginning where I was like, because he has so at the very beginning, there's the darkness, and you just hear the voice of the wife talking to him.
I panicked a little bit. I was like, I thought I was in for a fucking Outwaters situation. I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Oh, I thought that the version I was watching had just the audio for a while, and I was like, what the fuck?
Nope.
Dude?
Then it cuts right to a butt, and you're like, hell yeah. But she's talking in the beginning about how like she doesn't really know who he is anymore. He's such a robot, and so I was like, oh, maybe this is implying that he's already been through this process, but it seems to me like there's some holdover of memory between the clones and the originals, because there's that confusion about what if they swapped you out, you wouldn't know. And then also
I think he says something about like, we preserve your memories,
and they do that really great little twist partway through the movie where it cuts so that you think you're following the originals, and as they get pulled into
when they're all in the white and they get their throats.
Yeah, they're complaining about how long they've been waiting, and they're like,
and then they start clapping.
Yeah,
so good.
Yeah, probably my favorite part of the movie, just because it's like an awesome bit of editing that
it just subverts your expectations, just like real quick.
So I was like, oh, it doesn't seem like he's been through this before, but I thought in the beginning, I was like, oh, maybe he's been through this before, and that would lend to that person who stepped into the road being his his clone from a previous thing. And who knows, maybe that is the case and he has had his memory wiped. So, it could be anything.
I had an additional thought as far as like a theme for the film, which is around tourism. I think that a lot of times what ends up happening is that tourists and the government of tourist locations take advantage of like beautiful places. Like Hawaii is a perfect example where these tourism boards and all of these
entire beautiful beaches taken up by giant hotels and resorts.
And then like the people who actually live in Hawaii are like taken advantage of, and in most situations,
milk and shit like that, while these super rich people are out there like, look at the fucking turtles. That was me. I went to Hawaii and I swam with the turtles. I'm the problem. That's me.
I feel like that was another message in this movie. Is like, rich people suck.
Yeah, that's the most, I think, on the surface. A lot of people were comparing this to like a fucked up White Lotus, where it's like basically the entire satire to White Lotus is just look how fucked up rich white people are. And in this, like, I think there is a bit more going on in terms of like the duality and the identity and the breaking down of the identity and all that. But there is also the inspiration for this came half from Cronenberg's own terrible experiences at resorts that he had stayed at, and partly from a story he was already writing about having to kill your own clone. So he just combined the two ideas.
I'm wondering if maybe he has like an identity problem.
It's like a purge hotel.
Like based on the movies that he's released that I've seen so far, I would not be shocked if
he like came out as trans or something,
or like non-binary or something like in a few years.
May already be the case. I don't know enough about it, but I mean, it definitely seems like a Wachowski type thing where you look back at the movies and go, oh shit, every movie you've done has been about like the breaking down of identity in the body and all that. But that's also a thing that's run through all of Cronenberg's stuff, is like he wants to tackle all of those tough issues about like what it is, like what the human body is all about, and what part of you is you and what part is what separates your mind from your body. Nothing really. And let's explore that, and let's see the basis level we can take human beings to. But the tourism thing, especially as somebody who works in tourism, it definitely stuck out to me as like, because in the beginning you have the guy in the ATV who's a native who comes up onto the beach, and Mia Goth says, oh, he's saying he's gonna stab you through the throat, and then he's gonna string you up at the airport to keep all the other tourists from coming. And I was like, oh shit, that's a cool way of setting up that, like, while some of the natives may be in on this thing and working in it, mostly the people in the resort and the police, the natives aren't necessarily like cool with the fact that their entire country has basically been transformed into a playground. I mean, they have that line later, like, our country's not a playground, for rich white people or whatever.
Yeah, because they can get killed. Like, they can get murdered.
Which is, the fucked up thing about the dad. It's like that kid didn't get to have his dad cloned or whatever, as far as we know. So it's like, oh, they don't get clones, but all these rich people, because they can pay for it, they get clones. So there is a lot of like socio political economic stuff mixed in there too. But the thing that also stood out to me on this rewatch was that, I don't know if this was intentional, but the casting to me seemed like it was done to also throw you off of where you're supposed to be in the world where this is going on, because you have Skarsgård, who is Swedish, but most of the time is doing somewhere between a Swedish and American accent to where you're not 100% sure where he's supposed to be from. Mia Goth, no fucking clue where she's supposed to be from in any of the movies that she does. In this, she says London, then Paris, but she doesn't sound like she's British. And then her like boyfriend, husband or whatever, like he seems like he is of indeterminate nationality. So to me it seemed like that was done intentionally to make you kind of curious as to like where all these people were from and where they are in the world and where any of this is happening, and kind of just completely already from the very beginning kind of set you in an uneasy place of like, I don't know where I am and what's going on. And do you think there's actually a government somewhere that clones people and then lets you watch when you kill them?
100%.
Who knows?
100%.
But you guys had a good time?
Yeah, like I said, I thought it was fantastic. It really lines up with like my sensibilities when it comes to like a really fucked up, weird horror sci-fi. I thought it was sick. I was curious because it was nothing like I expected. With a name like Infinity Pool, I was expecting some like time loop shit or something like that. My
Letterboxd review for this was, this is this is like an episode of Black Mirror where you are fucking the pig and the pig is also fucking you, I think was what I said.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the concept feels very Black Mirror, just expanded into a whole movie. Like, what if you could clone yourself?
We'll talk about that later in the main episode.
Yeah, but and you had a good time? I know you said you didn't like it quite as much as Possessor.
No, I mean, I think Possessor is still his best movie. And that one just hits differently. Yeah. But I don't think that this was a bad movie by any means. I don't know if I had a good time with it is the right way to say it, but it was enjoyable.
It actually bumped up a little bit in my... I went up from a 3.5 to a 4 on my Letterboxd, so I actually did... I was really glad that I got a chance to rewatch it because I felt like it kind of came together a little bit tighter for me on the second watch.
One thing that John brought up to me earlier today was that it was a good pairing with Akira.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Which is what we're talking about on our main episode. So if you haven't checked that out, please do so immediately.
Yeah, and if I'm very fucking excited. Like, I've been excited about this lineup of movies that we're talking about today, like, for the last week, basically, since I knew this is what we were talking about, because I think that they're all just, like, really, like, stylish, crazy movies. But if anybody who's watching this, if you're curious about, there is an uncut version of this, but I looked into it, and because Cronenberg liked the pacing of this so much, it's not any longer or shorter. It's the exact same runtime. He just took a few frames and switched them out, so now you do see, and it's not even Skarsgård's real dong; it's a prosthetic. But you get to see instead of just the cum dropping on the rocks, you get to actually see that happen, and then there's a couple swapped in shots during the orgy scene to show like a little bit more dong and nudity, and then the stabbing scenes, like there were a couple parts where I could totally see where he probably switched things out, where it like cuts up to Skarsgård's face while he's being stabbed, and I was like, there was probably just a whole 2 minutes of straight stabbing there that he chopped up and mixed around. And
the movie's not for the faint of heart by
definitely
any means.
No, but he's one of those directors where I'm going to be fucking stoked for whatever he comes out with next. And I think it is really cool that a lot of people who are kids of directors, they probably think, oh, even if I do go into directing, I'm going to do something wildly different. And it's pretty cool that, as far as I've read, the whole Cronenberg family of David and his kids, they're all involved in first Papa Cronenberg's work. Like they've done, I think his daughter has done like assistant stuff on his films and does art stuff, and she's an artist and all this, and so very creative family. And I was much more excited and pleased with this movie than I was with Papa Cronenberg's newest feature. But
I think that we can all agree to that.
Yeah, I won't say I think that David Cronenberg is like beyond his prime. I just think that effort was a little too out there, and there wasn't enough to like latch on to.
Well, he's already got like 2 more movies that are coming out in the next couple of years, so I think he's back in his swing. He probably saw what his son was doing, and he was like, "Fuck, I got to come in here and start throwing punches because my son's gonna knock me out of the game."
If you're gonna have anyone take over the mantle, it'd be cool to it be your own kid.
The father becomes the son, becomes the father
fucking
in like a big mutant fucking but I hope you enjoyed this discussion. Big recommends for Infinity Pool from all of us. As Tone mentioned previously, we are talking about Akira for the debut installment of anime in our main episode, and then we're following that up with a discussion of Evil Dead Rise.
Brave.
Very excited to talk about all that, so tune into that. And
we're gonna spin the wheel of endless possibilities.
John, tell the audience what our J picks are.
So our J picks are Jumper, John Dies at the End, and Jennifer's Body.
Not a lot of J movies on the sci-fi or horror realm that interested us.
I'm not killing people. I'm killing boys.
All right, let's hit it with a spin.
Here we go.
It is Jennifer's Body.
Your pick again.
Fuck yeah. Seems to happen this way. John, have you had 2 picks in a row yet?
I think so.
I don't know.
Yeah, it seems
a discussion for another time.
Yeah, it seems to be balancing out nicely that like each of us have had at least a couple picks. So I'm excited to check out Jennifer's Body. I know you're not a huge fan, Tone, and you're
sure
not too excited about this.
I'll
rewatch,
give it another shot with some optimism.
Yeah.
And hey,
cautiously optimistic. The Porcelain Pete catchphrase.
It'll be more fun if we can argue about it anyway. So we'll see.
All right, cool. Well, that's what we're doing next week. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. And if you haven't, please check out our regular episode. And we will see you next time.
Keep it creepy.
Jamesy, little baby. Jamesy, baby boy.
Leaving all of this in.